Kayak anglers of the internet, welcome back to the Advanced Kayak Angler podcast with me, Dan Perry, and my co-host, Kurt Smith. What's up, dude?
What's going on, man? What is going on?
What's up? The big news. It's iCast week. All this cool stuff's coming out, including the Bonafide XTR 130.
That's not the only cool thing coming out now.
Yeah.
It seems like, didn't Wilderness just launch a
Wildy
big
has
kayak
one
too? Yeah,
Pelican has one. I just saw on KBN.
right. Well, that's actually been around there for a little while, man.
Oh, has
So, what about the Bass Pro one?
All
Bass Pro has one where you can have a dual motor on it, and that's been out for. I mean, it's the eight. This is the year.
the
Last year was
133.
inflatables.
Yeah. Mhm.
This year it's sleds,
The
big
barge.
giant barges. Yeah. And I shouldn't say that about them because I haven't been in them. I'm not trying to disparage them by calling them a barge or nothing, but they're big. They're big.
Yeah. It's a kayak, air quotes if you're just listening. It's a kayak, but it's made for two motors.
And it's like I feel we are approaching personal watercraft status.
Yeah.
I feel like for some of these things. I mean, we were talking a little bit behind the scenes in two motors, right? Man, that just seems to be like, I feel like now you are a personal watercraft. You're no longer a kayak. You've graduated out of the kayak. And it's getting so blurred, right? I mean, It's getting so blurred. Because
I even saw a couple of trails even have them, like All American Kayak Series. Apparently, they already allow two motors, and some other trail does too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I had no idea till you just told me right now.
Yeah, that's just something I saw on a group or something. So I'm not saying it's true. I've never fished an all American event, so I don't know. You would have to look at the rules, but that's what somebody said. So.
I kind of wouldn't doubt it with those guys because they seem to do things a little different than everybody else,
Yeah.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, because when I look at my pro angler, that's the farthest thing from a simple kayak. It's motor drive in the back, torpedo in the back, big two fish finders. It's very, very far away from a simple kayak.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't go that way. I'll say that. Like, I was 4 paddlers, like I raised a big stink and pissed people off whenever I said I thought that designated launches wasn't the way to go. And I'll stand by. I don't think two motors is the way to go. I mean, what will happen? I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you, man. You gotta, I mean, there's been so many debates on things like where do we draw the line in the sand for fish finders and all this and stuff. And I always kind of hate to draw that line in the sand, but I kind of feel like you're right, man. I think if we want to keep it to be kayak fishing, it kind of needs to be limited at least to one motor, which I kind of think is plenty. I mean,
yeah, it kind of makes a kayak be small enough to where, like, if it's so big, it doesn't make sense, because then you can't, with a 3 horsepower engine electric motor, you can't power it fast enough for it to make sense if it's too big. If you add 2 motors, then you have the speed of a stern motor and the fishability of a bow mount. You add those two together, and kayaks kayaks become boats in my mind. But
yeah,
like you said, personal watercraft.
Yeah, it's just, where's the line end,
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see, because I kind of want to see all these interesting watercraft or whatever they're going to be. I'm kind of into them, even though maybe it's not something I would personally buy for myself.
Yeah,
I think it's really interesting in seeing these different options, because they're different. I mean, hand it to these guys, they're doing something different.
And it's not to say that there isn't a good market for it, and I'm sure they know their market better than we do. And there's definitely probably opportunities and niche and to sell those boats, and that's cool. I like our sport the way it is. I don't want it to go. I don't want to meet, because it feels like we have downward pressure from tournament big boat fiberglass tournament bass anglers, where they've had to go to 10 rigs. And now they could be pushed into tiny boats where you see a big, Like even Ike and Ellie, a lot of other people have these tiny boats, Tiny Boat Nation, and these pimped out John boats. And then we're going that way too with the people trying to add a second motor. So it feels like we're going to meet in the middle somewhere. And I don't want to meet in the middle, because then it waters down where we finally got to a spot to where we're growing. We're like, we have bass and Hobie and these trails are really good and treating us really well. And things are finally looking up. Some people are starting to get paid and not, it's hard to make a good living from it, but there's a few people who are road dogging it, like one of our guests tonight. The, the downward pressure from it being too expensive on that side. And I don't want to meet in the middle. I don't want to water it down. I want kayak fishing to be kayak fishing, and they can have their thing. That's it. I'm sorry.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But we got an interesting show tonight.
That's right.
Little different. And this is like the comeback stories. When things go wrong, our next two guests have overcome them to achieve success from it. And the stories are just phenomenal, I feel like. And I feel like it's one of those things that especially new anglers need to hear it, and some seasoned anglers like myself included, because I know there's been a few tournaments where I've encountered a lot of obstacles. I let them get to me, and I didn't fish day two because there was just a lot of obstacles in my way, and I always regretted it. So, man, have some of these comeback stories that we're about to hear. I think it's gonna be refreshing.
There we go. Well, speaking of, we got Mr. Mike Fink, and 2 weeks in a row road dogging Mr. Jordan Marshall. What's up, fellas?
It's happening, guys.
What's going on?
Yeah, appreciate y'all being on. Jordan, you were just on last week, but Mike, tell everybody who you are, man.
Well, I'm just a hillbilly from Ohio.
Well,
I live in Dayton, Ohio. I dodge traffic for a living. Growing up in the 80s, your uncles tell you, go out and play in traffic. Well, I figured it'd make a good career and get paid to do it. So, other than that, just love to travel and fish. Fishing's my game. That's just what I love to do.
Heck yeah. We'll tell you, Kurt was saying that you had that in the Gunnersville event, you got fifth, right?
Yeah. I ended up taking fifth place in Gunnersville.
You whooped all of us. Tell us this story.
Give us a story, Mike. Come on, man. It's a good one.
Well, it all started out, I was late. Well, I went and fished Murray, then fused my kayak, left my kayak set out back. And 2 days prior to getting ready to go to Gunnersville, I think it was the day before. No, it was the day before. I was getting everything together. I was like, everything should be fine, no problem. I talked to Kurt for about, I don't know, an hour. Got off the phone. I was putting the last few pieces together, and I grabbed my motor, and I went to put my motor on my kayak, and I grabbed a hold of the prop, and it wouldn't move. The Susky was not very nice to me last year. Having a bow mount on Susky is not a very bright idea.
Gunnersville
Not
either.
very bright. And so I took it off after Susky. I never fished anymore. It's my busy time of the year with work, coming up the end of the season before the snow flies. Everybody's got
stripes roads.
Yeah. And so I took it apart, and everything was locked up, rusted. I was like, this is not going to happen. I'm not going. There's no way. I sent Kurt a picture. I was like, there's no way that I'm going to make this. I'm not going down there to pedal through grass that far I couldn't see it being feasible for me. And
you knew where you were going to fish, though, right? I mean,
yeah, I knew where I was going. I knew where I was going to go fish. I didn't know how bad the grass was because last March when we fished there, the grass wasn't that high. You know, it wasn't that bad. And I had called my buddy. He told me a few remedies to do to it. I ran to Walmart, picked up everything I needed, come back home. My son took it apart for me and did everything he said. I put it back together, hooked the battery up to it, and it worked. I was like, there is no way. So all the rust and everything that was in there, I cleaned it all out, put it all back together. Text Kurt a video, it working. I said, I'm on the road.
I couldn't believe it.
And on the way down, or I get down there thinking my fish finder, everything works. I get down there, get camp set up, great place down there, and I go out. When I got there, go pre-fish because I've never been out onto the main part of the Tennessee River. So that was my goal. When I got there, I was running and gunning all the way out to the Tennessee River. I wanted to see I wanted to see it. I've never got to see it. I always fish pockets or, I've never fished out on the main lake. And I wanted to go out there. And go out there, I have a great day of practice, knowing I'm not fishing there, but just to go out and catch some fish, just to be moving. And get back to camp and I lock my motor up and everything because I power load my kayak on my trailer. And get back to camp, flip my motor up, and all I see is water just pour out of it. I mean, it was done. I was like, no way, not again. Well, lo and behold, it wasn't the actual motor itself that I thought was bad. I thought the O-ring, around the head of the motor, it gave out because hitting rocks in Susky, it's horrible. It wasn't. My shaft, the epoxy that held my shaft in, had literally disintegrated around it. And I'm like, oh no, I don't know what to do. So I wake up the next morning, I let everything dry out. I just left it sitting and go out next morning, hook it up. It turns on, everything works as it should, and go to use my remote, and my remote don't work. My remote completely died. I had no remote. I was looking for a remote. My Garmin broke, so I had no fish finder. Luckily, I carry two with me. I have two setups. I have my Lowrance, but I use it just for mapping. And I was like, well, that's all I need. I don't need nothing else. The motor's broke. I'm already here. There's no turning back. Yeah. So I went to where I wanted to fish, and everybody knew, day one it was great because we didn't have that big storm yet, nothing, and the grass mat was perfect for me, and I don't even know why. I don't even know why it was where it was, but the whole everything that with everything being broke and everything trying to not freak out. I've had plenty of tournaments where everything goes wrong. It's just bad. Everything, you get in your head, and I couldn't do it this time.
Yes, trying to keep your head in the game,
which is hard because you've already had your trolling motor break twice, your key fob or your remote break, lost your fish finder. I mean, that right there is enough to spin out most like 90% of the people right there. Spin them completely out where They may get on the water, but they're just going to be a wreck. So, man, what
My-
kept you together then, man? What was like the one thing that kept your head level at that moment on day one?
I was there. I was in it. There was no turning back. There was no, I call my wife every morning, regardless. That's normally my first call, and that's my calming, anyways. And just to go out there and fish, old school. You don't need the electronics. You don't need the motors. I really need a motor because my knees hurt from pedaling, but that's just getting old.
Yeah. But
But
you overcame it. I mean, you pedaled through it and stuff.
just I think my biggest thing that rocked it all the way through was I camped by myself. I didn't go and hop in a house. I didn't have all that chatter around me. When I got done in the evening, I went back, I cooked my little meal on my little stove, and sat there and reflected for what I had worked and what I gathered for that day. And I think not being, trying not to say antisocial, but to be focused and not go out and and hang out with everybody. I mean, I love everybody I travel with and everything, but to not have that chatter of I'm catching it on this or this is what I'm doing. I need to focus on what I'm doing.
That
And I
I know
think
that messes me up, man. I can't like I'm happy to give out information unless I'm just totally and completely zero and have nothing. I
I've
hate to
been
hear other
burnt
people's
a
stuff.
couple times, and to be honest with you, I really won't tell you nothing anymore. I got burnt. I got followed, and to show up at my
Really?
spot or get a phone call that says this dude's in your spot and he's your roommate.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, so I this is a game. This is a game. We spend a lot of money to play this game. And in this game it's a lot of cutthroat. It's
Can
part
be.
of the game, I guess. It shouldn't be, but it is. It
Nah,
isn't life
fuck somebody
anyway.
if they do that. No, that's
Yeah.
not okay.
That's not okay at all. That's not okay.
No. Who was it? Call them out.
He don't even fish anymore.
Well, there you go.
I haven't heard I haven't heard nothing about this dude since. And but yeah,
We'll,
just
we'll leave him out of the story for.
Yeah.
yeah.
Man.
But anyways, but
So,
yeah, just
you didn't
just
have
that
you didn't even pause, man. You didn't even think for a minute. Your whole mentality was just like, I'm here, I'm doing it, I'm going out. F my fish finder, F all this stuff that you don't need to go fishing. I'm just gonna go fishing.
I went fishing. That was the biggest thing about it. I didn't have to worry about charging no batteries, nothing. I got in my kayak and took off. And to find the area that I found compared to what a lot of other people were fishing, you know, I think that, I did pretty good. And then when I fished it that year, the year prior when Bass was there, we were there in March, I think it was. I got a 7-pounder off of the point back in the cut. So I knew there was fish. It was going to hold there.
Yeah.
I mean, they just had to be there. Now, where they were going to be, that I couldn't tell you until I found them. And the big magic part about that whole thing, the way it all played out, was 3 sticks. There was 3 sticks that played the biggest part of the whole thing. Was like I said on Saturday when we fished, we had the storm blow in right after we got off the water. Everybody got off the water, and that huge storm blew in.
Bad.
That messed up my day one. I mean, messed up my area because I was good. You know, my bite didn't come first thing in the morning. You know, I had like a 16 and a half just throwing a frog around just because I knew when my bite was going to happen and when it wasn't going to happen. So I was just pecking around, and about 8:30, 9 o'clock is when everything happened. And like I said, them 3 sticks that was in this area, they were tree branches. Just 3 tree branches out off this point, 100 yards from the bank. So just how they got out there, I don't know. They could have been washed down the creek or whatever. And when I went back for day two, that was the
So day
that was
one, there was a mat there, right?
yeah, the mat was there, but when when that storm hit, it was gone.
It changed
was
it
gone.
completely up. Moved
Oh
the
yeah,
mat.
the water went up. What was it? 9, 10 inches.
Yeah, it went up a lot.
And when that water went up, because like I said, them 3 sticks were sticking out of the water a foot, and like we didn't have no wind pretty much day one. Day one was really just no. Day two was we didn't really have a lot of wind, and when it come day two, my stuff was disappeared. I didn't know. I was playing by the pin on my map to find exactly where I was at, and to look at what I was fishing, you couldn't see them 3 sticks except for when the wind would blow just a little bit. I could see the wave kind of like tip over it, and
So they weren't really sticking out of the water. They were just
no, when that water went up, the mat disappeared. So I'm fishing the water. How the water stayed clear like that, I guess it was just because it was back in the grass. But it opened up to nothing because I didn't know what was underneath it. It was that had a grass, you know, eelgrass and everything else chopped up on a mat. And when that water rose and that mat disappeared from that wind, it was nothing but hydrilla holes. If you fish in Florida, hydrilla is king.
And you have some experience in Florida fishing, I know.
And yes, so that was what brought day two together, was being able to actually see the holes what I was fishing and finally see those little tree branches just pop out of the water that I could throw at one and catch one, and I'll throw it right at the other one, and I'll catch one, and I'll throw it over here at this one and catch one. Then if I throw it back over here and don't catch one here, I'll throw it back at the middle one, and I'll catch another one off the middle one. They just kept reloading. I had no idea. Just a sticko worm with an offset hook, no weight. Just threw it up, and they were eating bluegill. They were eating the heck out of bluegill. Literally, they were just
loading on those tree branches, huh?
And they would just reload on those 3 tree branches.
Now, so was it cleared out around the tree branches all the way down the bottom?
Yeah, the whole, because I think that those 3 tree branches that were sticking out of the water, you know, I mean, they were probably 15 feet, 20 feet apart, kind of like an old triangle. The mat was stuck to them because when the water was down, the mat was just like locked to them. It was all the way around them. And I would just hit the holes in the mat, not knowing what's underneath it but I'm watching them bass come out and eat them bluegill off the edge of it. Mm-hmm. So I knew if I can get it in it, they're going to eat it. So I was pulling them out of the mat on day one. And then on day two, it wasn't there, but it took me all day to figure out exactly where to line myself up. And I pulled it off. I was really, really surprised at the day one because I knew that I was going back there to catch 16, 17 inches all day long. I knew that those were the cookie cutters in that area. Every time I practice there, that's the cookie cutters. I know 16, 17 inches, I can catch them cookie cutters, which is great for that area. But I mean, to pull that 19 and them other ones, I was not expecting that, no. But when everything played out and worked together, it was the greatest feeling because I did it with nothing but pedaling and to the roots of what we all started at.
No panoptics.
No barge.
No fan up, nothing. It was
No two motors.
No two motors. Yeah.
the thing about that two motors is on day one, at the end of day one, we all got a text message. Everybody got that text message. I know everybody got that text message.
No two motors.
if you got two motors, you're disqualified. I want to know the reason that got put out or who got caught with two motors. I've still yet to find that out.
Yeah,
I ain't heard nobody say anybody got disqualified for having two motors, but we all got that text message. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, Mike, what would you say to the guys that are maybe starting out into tournaments?
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. I like my live scope. I can catch every catfish just about anywhere on it. Not very good at catching bass stuff on it. It's more of a learning tool than it is an actual fish catcher for me. Now, there's other people out there that's got it completely figured out. I don't. I'm learning from it, and you got to take in what you're learning from it. You actually watching them fish actually move in their behaviors and stuff like that. You're learning more than you think that you're going to catch because you ain't guaranteed to catch them. You can see them, but you can't make them all bite.
Yeah. It's true.
So it was nice to not have that. Just be simple.
Be simple. Words of wisdom right there. Words of wisdom.
It was just be simple.
So now, and I always like a good comeback story, man, and kind of overcoming the odds. And you're from Ohio, man. You know, Ohio guys really showed out in that event at Guntersville. You usually don't see so many people from the Buckeyes.
Ohio is the top.
Yeah, not like that. It was awesome to see, man. I wish I was up there a little bit too to help out, but you know, I hate Guntersville.
It was great. See Siddiqui win it, local buddy, travel buddy.
Yep.
So it was great to see Siddiqui win it.
Crushed it.
Yeah, he called me right after the tournament. He says, now that we won hardware together, he says, whenever I call you, you have to answer. So every time he's called me, I've answered it. But it's great to be out, and travel and get to do these things that I get to do. It's not been an easy road. And, when I first started, I thought it was all about, this tournament trail, that tournament trail, get in this tournament, that tournament, that tournament. And after doing all them tournaments and online tournaments and stuff like that, me just dedicating myself to one trail has made it so much easier to, one, work around with work, because my job, I work 6 months out of the year. The other 6 months I'm laid off. The 6 months that I'm laid off is when it's cold. So there's not very many tournaments going on when I want to fish them. So it's great, and I love it. And
I guess that's why you fish Florida every year then.
Yeah, when you got a trailer on Okeechobee, it makes it nice.
Oh, I love it. We were talking about that last week. That's my number one.
Arnie Pond Canal. I looked right at Honey Pond Canal from the back of the trailer.
Really? Man, I
Yeah,
love Okeechobee.
my dad and uncle bought it, or got it about 8, 9 years ago. But I've been fishing down there. I think my first trip I was about 14, and it's been like everything. My dad meets us at down there. Me and my uncle, we jump on an airplane, fly down. I got the bass boat. I got my own bass boat and all that, but it sits down there. I just pay for it to be in storage. It ain't been on the water in 2 years. Yeah, I love kayak fishing.
Yeah.
It's the being alone on the. I mean, I like fishing with everybody, but to be alone, just cruising down a river and just casting every cast, not knowing what that next fight's going to be, the sound of everything around you. Providing I live on a very good river, but all I hear is either a train or semis or cars because it's runs along the highway, but it's still just being on the water. Anywhere, just being on the water. It's
Amen.
the greatest. That there's nothing that can replace it. You can have $1 million boat and be on the water and not be happy.
Yeah.
And we can take our plastic boats and go and sit and fish and enjoy every moment and take in everything. It's that's the biggest thing about kayak fishing.
Love it, man. I love it. That's a good story, man. I love
And
it.
congrats.
Yeah, and congrats on fifth place. That's you
So
know,
yeah, I got to go to Susky now, and hopefully I can do good there because Murray absolutely destroyed me.
yeah.
Yeah, that's for a whole nother day on that one. Murray was nightmare.
We
Don't
all got
trust electronics.
yeah, we all have a nightmare one. Jordan, man, I want to hear your story now, buddy. This is story night. This is story night here.
I ain't never
I'm
seen you so quiet for so long.
I was listening. You know me. I love a good story. When I saw your post asking about who has a good tournament story, comeback story, I obviously knew I had a good one that has happened. I was just looking up on my phone to figure out exactly when it happened. It was 2017, so kind of there still wasn't. There was obviously a lot of people kayak fishing, but we've had a crazy blow up since 2017. That was 7 years ago. We had a big blow up in COVID, and kind of the first 2019, everything kind of blew up with the first year of the BOS series. But this story's 2017, pre BOS series, pre Bassmaster,
Pre national series.
pre national series entirely. And the biggest tournament of the year at that time, well, there were kind of two big tournaments of the year. They were both kind of standalone events. There was the TOC that wasn't the TOC as we all know it now. It was the TOC in Texas at Lake Fork, and there was the Hobie Bass Open Tournament. Not BOS, just Hobie Bass Open. There was one standalone event every year at Kentucky Lake that Hobie ran, and people came from all over the place to fish that tournament because it was about the only way freshwater anglers could qualify for Worlds. And so this is my first time ever fishing that Hobie tournament, 2017. I went down there. I practiced for a few days. I got on an absolutely dynamite shad spawn bite and practice, and could sit there and watch them every morning on this one point, just blasting shad on this one point for about 30 minutes. Right. Day one, fished it. I had I just looked. I had like 55 and change, something like that. It was back when there was a 3-fish tournament, not even a 5-fish. It was a 3-fish tournament. And the after the first day, there was probably 100 anglers, give or take, maybe less, probably 90. I don't know, somewhere around 100. And I am, see, 2017. I was like 21, maybe 22. Um, my first national event, and I was in 4th after the first day. Top 2 qualify for Worlds. My first time fishing this event. I am stoked, right? And it's my first time staying with Lambert, I think. Big brother. We're staying together in a hotel all the way up by the dam. I'm fishing like in New Johnsonville area, so I'm 2 hours from tournament check-in and where my hotel is to where I'm fishing, like a solid 2 hours.
Yeah.
And day 2, pack up all my stuff. We're checking out of the hotel. It's like 3:30 in the morning or something like that, because I got 2 hours, and I'm trying to make sure I'm there really early because I've got to go and pedal out to this point that's a mile from launch. And that was back when a mile seemed a lot further than a mile now. It's like, oh, I've got to go a whole mile. And so I'm like, all right, cool. 3:30, I'm going. I get on 24, go to Gilbertsville or whatever that town is where we had the awards. I'm staying in Cuttawa or Katawa or whatever that the city is by Barkley Dam. So I'm going across. I'm going down I-69 south. And as I'm driving, I start noticing like something's going on with my truck, right? I had an 02 F-150. The truck had probably 140,000 miles on it, 150,000 miles, maybe a little bit more. And I'm driving, and I realize something is not happening. Everything like is kind of going out, and I'm like, is my alternator going out? Like I kind of have that kind of thought going, right? So I kind of cruise off like right at the start of the off ramp at this exit, and I'm like, what's happening here? Like, okay, like if this died, it's probably my alternator, right? I'm not a mechanical person, right? I can fix stuff when it breaks. By all means, I'm Wreck-It Ralph. I've learned. My dad taught me well. I keep tools in the truck. I'm shade tree mechanic loosely, right? And but I'm also, this is like 7 years ago. And I'm like, man, how am I going to figure out a way around this? I've got an hour and 45 minutes, hour and 30 minutes to get still left to go to this spot. And my bite is first thing in the morning. So I'm like, okay, I'll call AAA. Maybe I can get a battery to drive. Like maybe I can get AAA to bring me a battery. So I'm on the phone with AAA, and I might be able to, get the truck started and run it off a battery to get to somewhere, right? I'm on the phone with AAA. I think total time that morning was an hour and a half.
Ooh.
Nobody ever picked up. It just rang and rang and rang, and then I'd call them back, and it'd ring, and then it would basically like ring so long it would put me on hold or whatever. But nobody ever picked up. Nothing. It wouldn't like hardly send me to voicemail. It just kind of basically just rang. So at this point, after about 20 minutes of this, I'm like, okay, this ain't gonna happen. So I start looking at my phone. Well, there's a Walmart at that exit. It's not far from the interstate. It was probably half a mile to a mile from where my truck was, right at the off ramp. So I decided to walk to the Walmart, trying to figure out, am I going to call somebody? Like, what is my next option? So I settle on getting a battery for my truck, and I put it in a buggy, checked out, and I pushed this buggy however far back to my truck on the interstate, out the Walmart, out the parking lot. I'm not carrying a battery a mile back to my truck on the side of the interstate or on the off ramp kind of thing. I just pushed this thing back in a buggy, and I swapped a battery back out and put the old battery in the back of my truck. Truck starts up, and I'm like, all right, we'll see how far this gets me. And I'm like, good old Walmart, I'll just take this back when it gets done, and I figure out what I'm doing. So there's a buggy left on the side of the interstate, RIP. And I get back in my truck. I drive whatever hour and a half down to New Johnsonville. Truck gets me there. I'm at this point ecstatic, right? I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a chance. Now, the problem was in the however long it took me, hour and a half basically, to decide to walk to Walmart, get a battery, check out, walk back to my truck, swap a battery out, put everything away, tools away, back in my truck, drive an hour and a half. At this point, the shad spawn is over. I get to that point. There's some bait fish there. I catch one small fish on top water. I'm like, okay, that's not happening. I caught a couple halfway decent fish on that point. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I've got a limit, but it's not a good limit. I've got 2 decent fish and 1 small fish. And I'm like, I caught some fish in practice out on the main channel. There's like this long kind of old railroad bed or whatever that is on the low end of Kentucky Lake. And I'm basically just going down the bank, throwing a bluegill colored jackhammer at the time. And honestly, jackhammers weren't even out. So it was probably just a regular chatterbait. And I'm just fishing for something that'll eat a bluegill. And I'm looking at my phone because I probably got there at 9 o'clock. Or probably not 9 o'clock. We'll say 8 o'clock. So we started fishing at like 5:30, 6 o'clock. You know how them early tournaments are in Central Time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've probably got 3, maybe 4 hours to fish before I need to figure out, like, I need to be back at the truck at noon. That'll give me 4 hours to basically figure out how to get back to check in, right? And I'm like, that basically gives me 2 hours to drive and 2 hours to figure out what's wrong with my truck. And if something goes sideways, because I pretty well knew that battery wasn't going to get me too terribly far before it drained completely out of juice with no alternator. So I'm running the main channel. I catch the most random 19 3/4 inch smallmouth that may have ever existed on the low end of Kentucky Lake ever. And
the low end of the lake too.
The low end, the south end of the lake, I catch a random smallmouth in late June in probably 2 or 3 foot of water. And I'm like, you know what? I've got 50 inches. I had 50 inches a day before. At this point, it was like 11 o'clock. And I said, I'm turning around and I'm going back. This is good enough for me. I got 50 inches. And 50 inches is not like 50 inches now on 3 fish. 50 inches on 3 fish then was like, oh, yeah, like 50 inches. That's like, 85, now and have, it's like, okay, I got 50 inches. I'm just going to, call good enough. I fished my way back. No more bites. I drugged some stuff on the point just to see if some fish were lurking around. No dice. It was a shad spawn. Those fish are gone. And I loaded my truck. I loaded the kayak up on my truck. It was about noon. I was happy. I was like, I've got 4 hours to basically make it back to check-in in a 2-hour drive. I get in the truck, start it up. I'm like, okay, it starts. Check number 1. It's running. I get maybe 20 minutes down the road, and I realize my truck is dying again. I'm like, crap, I was at least hoping to make it a little further, but I'm kind of in a town, maybe Camden or whatever one of those towns are down there on the left side of the lake.
At least back to your buggy.
Yeah. Make it back to my buggy, and I could just stop in the same spot and just go get another battery, right? Like I was planning ahead by leaving that buggy there, right? And so I'm basically in the middle of this town. I kind of run out of juice on top of this hill, and I'm looking about a mile away. There's a O'Reilly's. Until this day, because of that, I am a hardcore O'Reilly's man. You know what I mean? When something goes wrong, when my water pump went out on my 2014 F-150 last week, my first call is O'Reilly. You know what I mean? We hardcore on the O'Reilly train. O'Reilly's sponsor me. No shame in my game. I'm an O'Reilly's man. And because of this day, I wish I knew the text name that was at O'Reilly, sales guy, whatever you want to call him. I called this guy and said, "Hey man, I'm about a mile out. Do you have such and such alternator?" I went through the whole spiel, 4-wheel drive, O2, 4.6 V8 engine, all that, This old boy's got an alternator that fits my truck. I'm like, let's go. He said, when can you be here to pick it up? I said, buddy, I'm about a mile away, and it would be awesome if you could come jump me off and see if my truck will make it there. So he goes, all right, we're slow. I'm on my way. Old boy pulls up, jumps the truck off. I basically get to the top of this hill, and as soon as I top this hill, I make it about 100 yards, and the truck dies, and I'm going downhill, and I'm like, there's the O'Reilly's. And I basically just cruised down this hill for half mile or whatever, pull into the parking lot. I got no power steering. I'm like turning this thing. I don't even make it in a parking spot. I barely make it out of the way to even get in the parking lot, not to block the entrance and exit. I go, the guy's there kind of waiting on me. Walk in, pay for the alternator. Me and old boy swapped the alternator out in 30 minutes in the parking lot. You know, get all the belt off, install this alternator, get everything put back together, pay the guy, give him like $20 cash extra because that was all the cash I had, and drive the other hour and a half or whatever it was back to check in. I make it back there with like, I don't know.
What do you do with your battery?
What'd you say?
Did the battery still work?
Oh, the battery was good. I mean, the battery was fine. It was a brand new battery, you know. It just, you know, the alternator was out and it was draining. Everything that the truck was running was just draining that battery.
Gotcha.
So as soon as we put a new alternator in and jumped everything off, you know, I was good to go. And I don't think I ever took that battery out of that truck until we sold it, right? And well, actually, I take that back. I put the original battery back in the truck and I returned the battery to Walmart in my hometown, and they gave me my money back from battery. And I told them it was a bad battery. I didn't want another one. I was going with something different. So I got my money back for the battery, actually.
All right.
And so I drove back to check in, and everybody's like, "Oh man, you didn't have a good a day as yesterday." I said, "Brother, I'd take that 50 inches over the 55 I had any day of the week because I worked harder than everybody in this entire tournament to get my 50 inches than anybody else did." I said, "I don't care how y'all fished offshore or whatever else or fought pleasure boats." I was like, me and Ricky Bobby at O'Reilly's done swapped out an alternator in the parking lot. You know what I mean? And I finished 8th and cashed a check in my very first Hobie national event that I ever fished in 2017 with 105 inches, give or take, in 2 days. Finished 8th. That was the one that Jay Wallen won. So Jay won and Josh Stewart finished 2nd. They got to go to Worlds. That was the first time they all went to Sweden. I know Ron Champion was in that group that finished above me. But, man, I was ecstatic. 8th place. I cashed a check in my first ever national event and swapped an alternator out in the middle of my day.
I was 2 places behind you, man. I didn't even know you then.
Yeah, there was not a whole lot of people at all that knew me then. I mean, it was kind of, that was my first national jaunt into the wide world of kayak fishing.
I mean, to be honest, I don't think anyone really knew anyone back then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those were like those tournaments were like so significant in forming friendships and kind of meeting people who were part of the community back then. So, man,
Yeah.
it feels like to me hearing the story that you didn't even really pause when you had problems. You didn't like really let it get to you too bad. You just figured out a way to fix the problem and fixed it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of stories that we could talk about and go through from, you know, changing boat ramps with an hour and a half left to go in tournaments and driving 30 minutes with an hour and a half left to fish for 45 minutes or whatever in tournaments and culling fish late in the day and all this other stuff. That's just my absolute favorite one. Another one of my favorite ones that's not even me, when we went to Dardanelle, probably 2021, there's a great story with Ron Champion getting his catalytic converter cut off at Dardanelle. And I'm fairly certain he cashed a check at Dardanelle that year too. And he had to stay there like 3 or 4 more extra days to get his truck worked on and get a catalytic converter put in it by some, you know, local shop or whatever. But that's another good one that nobody really knows about.
Yeah, not only did they cut his catalytic converter, they cut his transmission lines. So when he started,
they cut it all.
Everything. His oil cooler too. They cut. I mean, they just butchered the under. Oh my God, man! I couldn't. When he was telling me, I was there for that tournament, and when he was telling me everything, I was just like, "You are kidding me." He's like, "No, they cut everything on the bottom of my car."
I'm glad my car's low to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, Ron the next time, I feel like the next year we went to Dardanelle, or maybe it was the same year. He had like a rental truck or something, maybe, or maybe it was the next year we went down there. I remember Ron posting a picture where he parked directly over the top of this big mud puddle, and he was like, "Gotcha." He said, "I'm outsmarting you now," or something like that. I just thought that was the funniest thing that sticks in my mind from those events.
Yeah, I got to tell you, especially at 21, I doubt I could do it now. I'm so bad about leaving on time. To leave yourself all that time in a tournament, yeah, I don't think I could have done that. So, yeah, good on you, man.
And mandatory check-ins back then. I think some people forget
Mhm.
that we had mandatory check-ins, so you couldn't be late if you wanted to hold your placing in it. So you might have to cut off some time, fishing time.
It's still show them your phone, right?
No, that was
No,
the
those
beginning
were
of Tourney X.
that actually
Oh,
that event wasn't Attorney X. Those events in the
I
first year of Hobie BOS was actually on iAngler.
That's
yeah.
right. That was iAngler. All those were all the Hobie ones.
Tourney X existed, but it was not as popular. It wasn't like the sole platform the way it is now. Tourney X probably had a majority of the market share, but iAngler was a competitive product then. It was just kind of laid out different. People have their own opinions about it, but it was something that took some market share at the time, and we had a handful of events that were on it, local events and stuff like that. Obviously, the BOS series that first year in 2019 had the whole series on it. Yeah, it was. I think the thing that overshadows that the my alternator was the same year that Siddiqui and Lambert were late, and Lambert got a ticket and was late to the check-in, and I think he would have probably beat me in that tournament, but Lambert got a ticket from a state trooper on his way back to the awards.
Mhm.
Oh
Because
man,
they dropped like
those are good
60 inches
stories. Yeah, I
apiece.
remember.
Oh yeah. They both, him and Siddiqui both were sitting out on the ledge, and I think they both had about 60 inches apiece on day 2. And I think Siddiqui might have been on time, but he had a bad day 1 or something like that. And Lambert, I just remember Lambert getting a ticket, and that's why he was late and got his fish DQ, because it was a hard mandatory check-in at that point in time.
Yeah, it was a little different than it is
Man.
now.
And those are back then. I think you even had like a Saturday afternoon check-in, even on Saturday afternoon, where you had to come back and get your day 2 ID back then. And they kind of were like, "Hey, here's your top 5. Do you guys want to talk about anything?" And of course, back then everybody was like, "Oh yeah, I caught them offshore," or I caught them shallow. Nobody ever wanted to say anything, which is a complete waste to have anybody talk. "Hi, I'm from Tennessee," or "I'm from Kentucky. I was fishing offshore." All right, go to the next person. That's all I'm saying.
That's one of the things I am so glad that they changed over time. They evolved away from, because, and that was really hard for a 2-day tournament to show up for awards on Saturday night. You're hungry. You barely made it back in time. You're sitting there waiting for them to go through their stuff. You're starving to death.
Yeah.
Then you're going to eat at like 8 or 9 o'clock, and then trying to go to sleep and be up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Man, it was, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to have
don't
our
miss that.
trademark. Yeah, it's hard to have our trademark Saturday night steak night for the East Tennessee guys if we've got to go back to a check-in on Saturday night. You know what I mean? With they cut out those day 1 recheck-ins, and we started having steak nights and grilling out at our Airbnbs and stuff like that, and it made the whole experience a lot better not having to go to a day 1 recheck.
Yeah. Oh, such good, some good memories though, man. Right there, honestly, talking about that old Hobies.
Yeah,
what would you say to like a someone who's kind of just getting into the sport, and they're trying to think about, they maybe had a bad tournament and left early? I mean, are you just going to tell them to grind it out, or what's your like motivation to push through that stuff?
But it frees up.
There we go. I got you. What'd you say? Kurt?
What would you say to someone or what was your motivation to help you push through that stuff? And what would you like tell people who maybe struggle with it or struggle with the mental game a little bit when obstacles come up like that, man? What's kind of like the advice you might give them?
Honestly, I've probably fished, 300 plus tournaments, kayak tournaments in the last 10 years or so. And, I've went home early, my fair share of events. It to me, it's kind of what you're going into a tournament to do. For years and years, my only goal was to show up and win. If I was in 25th or 30th place after day one, I had a bad habit of going home, which did me no good. I didn't learn fisheries nearly as much as I could have. But in events where you're in it and things are going sideways, those are where you kind of become you learn more from diversity and things like that than you ever will from going home. Whether it's
Yep.
just fishing right beside a ramp, the TOC at Eufaula that I finished second in, I had a really bad practice and I was just dreading that tournament. And first day of the tournament, I basically just went out and was like, I'm just going to fun fish and see what happens. And the first day of that TOC at Eufaula, I was not out of sight of the boat ramp, and I basically had my 5 fish of the day, and was like, I could have done anything in the world that first day, and that's not really a comeback story. But based on my practice was so poor, just go out and fish. That's what it boils down to, is just go out and fish. And I know that's a bit hypocritical of me, because I've spent a lot of time fishing places and going home on day two and things like that. But I would be a lot better off with tournament results and having more fun and learning things and figuring things out about fisheries and figuring things out about myself and my equipment. Just go fishing. Don't overthink it. You don't have to be on a crazy pattern. You don't have to be on anything. You would be surprised what you learn when you just go fishing. Period. Point blank. End of story. Figure out, you hear all these coaches and stuff when they have injuries and whatever, pick your professional sport. At some point in time, you've probably heard next man up or whatever. Well, if your battery goes out, it's next battery up. If you don't have another battery, well, guess what? You're pedaling. Your pedals go out, and guess what? You're paddling. Oh, you don't have a paddle? Guess what? You better be push poling, because at the end of the day, you can do anything that is available. If you just keep on trucking, keep after it, you will be surprised what happens if you just keep your head down and get after it. I've slept in my truck at a bunch of tournaments just trying to make it to the next tournament and fish, and just having sheer stupid and blind determination. And it's a mindset of just going and doing it. That's it. Just go do it.
Just go do it.
Great advice, man.
Absolutely.
Wise beyond your years.
If only I took my own advice. I've done enough tournaments to where I can say, don't do this, do this, and I fall somewhere in between. It's like I told a guy at work today when we were at work, kind of partly training him, not really training him, but he's a new guy, and I've been working at the city about 10 years now. So I looked at him, and he kind of had this bewildered look when I was doing something, and I was like, do as I say, not as I do,
Not as I
and you'll be
do.
a lot better off. I said, I know I can do what I'm doing right now. I said, I've got about 100 feet where I can do what I'm doing, and I know when I can do it. But I said, do not do this until you know without a shadow of a doubt you can do this.
Heck yeah.
Well, I think we're right at about an hour here.
Yeah.
You want to close? You want to close it down?
Yeah. Let's do it. We want to give y'all a chance to shout out any sponsors. We appreciate y'all being on. Mike, we'll start with you, man. Anybody you want to shout out?
Shout out to my wife and my family that root me on. I don't have nobody. I do it all out of my pocket, buddy. There's no. I run and gun every bit of it I do. But that's my enjoyment out of it. I don't need nothing. So big shout out to especially Smitty, because when I first started getting into this, I finally met him, and to me that was the greatest thing in the world. I met the kayak champion, so big shout out to Smitty, and I appreciate you guys having me on. I never thought I would ever be doing any of this, and
Yeah, man. Thank you.
You deserved it, man. 5th place. That was a good
I
job.
appreciate it.
Beat me. Jordan, how about you, man?
Yeah, there's
I see you got that nice Lou's polo on.
Yeah, I got my nice Lou shirt on. I got a pack for ICAST as soon as we get off here. I fly out tomorrow. There's a lot of people. I mentioned them last week. Lou's, Strike King, Hobie Eyewear has been an incredible sponsor to me that I've worked with them this year. Um, um, Hobie kayaks that I've been in for a long time. I don't remember if that was during this podcast or before, but I've been in a Hobie since like 2014, so 10 years of fishing out of a Hobie. They've been very good to me for a long time. MillerTech lithium batteries, since we've been running motors and everything, they've been an incredible sponsor to me, and I know Kurt has nothing but good things to say about them as well. Those guys are unbelievably fantastic people. Owner Hooks, Mike McLaurin, and those guys have been incredibly nice to me. There's if I could give any advice, period, to anybody that's kayak fishing, or whether they're playing cornhole or whatever y'all want to do for fun and competitiveness. Pickleball. Yeah, I like playing pickleball. If you're gonna have a partnership with companies, like Mike said, he didn't have any. Mike, if you get some, and I know you will, brother, if you keep doing well and finishing top 5s and Bassmasters. My only advice to anybody is represent companies that you want to deal with on a personal level. A lot of hooks do a lot of the same things. Obviously brand preference is something that everybody has different things of, and no matter what brand it is, find some people that you want to sell products for. That is all this boils down to. I don't care what product it is. You find somebody that you trust and like dealing with, and find somebody that you can call and ask them, or tell them happy birthday, and ask them how they're doing. Find people that you can call and support you, and you can support them equally. That is my advice as far as sponsors go. If I'm giving out advice about keeping your head down, there's some advice. Find people that you want to deal with on a personal level. I don't care what their product is. Find people that you want to support personally, and that you like their product as well.
That's right. I've
I
really gotten into
appreciate
their
that.
jungle weedless Nico and jungle weedless wacky hooks lately too.
I got some hanging up on the wall right there. I promise you. There's the jungle hooks are bad to the bone. Owner jungle anything. You talk about jungle flipping hooks, or even their wide gap hooks. I think the Zoe wire, that little gray hook
super
material.
slick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an incredible, whether it's regular hooks or treble hooks. I think the Zoe wire treble hooks are the best treble hooks on the market. And that's actually how I got hooked up with Owner. Was I basically was like, you know what, I'm gonna find whatever I think is the best, and I went down to McKee Outdoors, which is a great tackle shop by my house, and basically grabbed Gamakatsu and Owner and Trocar. And I was kind of a Trocar guy at the time, and I kept losing fish, and basically was like, let's take a time out here and try to figure out what's happening. And I just bought all these different hooks, and for whatever reason, I liked Owner. They worked for me, and it started out with their treble hooks, just trying the Zoe wire, and I really liked them. I noticed a big difference when I was putting them on top waters, and y'all know how top water fishing is. You get a bunch of fish that just smack at baits and whatever else. And I noticed my hookup ratio went up, and I made a post on Facebook that was basically, "Hey guys, I ain't got any dedication or relationship with this company, and I think they're cool. Take it, do what you want with it. I don't know." And friend of a friend, was Mike McLaurin from them, and we started talking and got an Owner hookup with that. So, you never know what'll happen. I had no interest in trying to get a pro staff. Like I said, I've got a great tackle shop by the house that I just go and buy stuff, whatever. And, that's deal with people that you want to deal with on a personal level. And those guys are fantastic. And, shout out to them.
Heck yeah.
Awesome.
Well, cool. We appreciate y'all being on. Good luck the rest of the season, and appreciate everybody listening. We'll see y'all again next week.
Hopefully, we'll all see you guys at the Susky.
That's right. Good
At
luck.
Husky.
Yeah, I'll see you at Susky. Y'all have a good night.
See ya.
Later.